Um, I would say it's like a mix of being raised by a dad who was an engineer, mom who was a nurse, and I grew up in Cupertino, California. So like 70% of my school was Asian, and like basically most of my close friends from high school, they all went to like all the top UCs. Like they went to Berkeley, LASD, or an Ivy League or something. Um, so like that's the context in which I was raised. But despite having like all this academic focus, I was like a pretty relative to my peers. I was pretty below average student or average student.
Mhm.
I was more the athlete in the family. My brother went to UCSD. My sister went to UCLA. I was not academically inclined enough to get into either of those. I was mostly the athlete. And I think so. The other layer that's most important is I was genuinely very pessimistic about my own life. And by the time I was in like 16, 17, 18, I truly believed that my life would amount to just mediocrity. So I had a
Mhm.
very low sense of self-efficacy. I had very poor social skills. Like I couldn't hold eye contact with people I didn't know. I could only talk to friends. I basically freeze up talking to strangers. So I didn't do it. Like even ordering food at like dim sum when I went out with my family, like that was nerve wracking for me.
You were
Um,
you said you were the youngest?
yeah, I'm the youngest of three.
Wow, that's so interesting because I always thought you were like a super smart guy. So do you think it was because everybody around you was so gifted, or is it you're actually not smart? Because I don't think you're not smart, right?
I think I just didn't do well in school, and I'm not fully sure that school is measuring smartness.
Mm,
I don't think there's a perfect correlation there because I think part of doing well in school is like being able to see the game that is being played and being willing to play that game. That was basically what my sister described school at. She was like, "Oh, this is a game. It's a game of how to win trust with like teachers and professors, and it's a game of understanding like what are you actually graded on and
yeah.
not what things actually mean." And I
Mm,
remember her saying that in high school, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "That makes no sense to me. What is the game?" Like, I had no capacity for that at that age. So and also I think like prefrontal cortex development for dudes, like we don't fully even mature on that front until like our mid 20s or something.
mhm.
So I think I was just a late bloomer, where like my brain didn't really turn on per se until like 18, 19, like my first year of college. So I
Mhm.
think my brain wasn't functional enough to
Uh-huh.
do insanely well in school. I just kind of got by. Um,
What was your brain doing before 18 and 19?
I mean, I was underslept. Like I got like 6 hours of sleep, 5, 6 hours of sleep on a regular basis. I was depressed because I was just like, I don't see them. I wasn't motivated to do school. Like
Mm,
I remember just dreading history because I'm like, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to memorize these facts. I'm going to get tested on these facts. I'm going to do shit because I don't like studying it. I don't see the point of it. And then we're never going to use these facts again. Like
mhm.
I somehow already knew that, so it demotivated me even more to even allocate any more energy to it. So like
Mm,
I was like running all these thoughts in my brain while feeling like I was a shit Asian child because I
yeah.
wasn't getting the straight A's. And then just like thinking about the video games I was playing and like I was thinking about the girls that I had a crush on. And
Mhm.
like that was probably like 80, 90% of my headspace at the time.
So part of it was you said it was a capacity to not understand the game, but part of you realized it was a game that you didn't want to play as well.
Yeah, so I think so yeah, I describe it now as I didn't have the capacity, but maybe more accurately it was like I didn't have any desire to learn it.
Mhm.
So inherently, I couldn't apply myself to try to learn it because I didn't see the end result to be worth it or like aligned with who I was.
Mm.
That might be more accurate.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what makes entrepreneurs good entrepreneurs is they're able to like take a step back and observe things. So
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm curious. I'm like wondering if that's kind of related to how you turned out, because I was the same way in high school too. I was like
Oh yeah.
not want to learn, study, but when I was
Mhm.
excited or interested, that's when I paid attention. So
Yeah. The issue for me was that basically never happened in school.
Mm-hmm.
It was only video games, and maybe there's one subject was like sports medicine. It was like a new elective, experimental elective. That was like the only class I ever remember being really excited about. Everything
Mm-hmm.
else was just like, do I have to? Like, I guess.
Mm-hmm. What kind of athlete were you?
I did. I was marching band for fall, and then I did soccer after, and then I did badminton, and then I did 1 year of wrestling. I did cross country for a few years. So those were like the high school sports.
Mm-hmm. So what happened after high school? Like where'd you end up?
I went to community college for the first year because it was a mix of I was I felt like I don't think I've ever said this out loud, but I think at the time I'm like I was too embarrassed to go to one of the lower UCs,
Mm-hmm.
like UC Merced or UC Santa Cruz. I felt like the cultural connotation at the time was like, oh, you're not that smart.
Mm-hmm.
So like I remember feeling the internalized shame from that, and I'm like, you know what? I'd rather just if I'm not going to go to any good school, I might as well just say that I'm going to community college while I'm
Uh-huh.
figuring things out, and say that I'll transfer. And I
Oh
think
my
that
God.
there's like a non-trivial amount of me that was operating like that. But I think there was also a real part that was like, I'm not prepared to uproot my entire life and live somewhere else. Like I have
Mm.
so many question marks about my own life, and I feel like changing too much would be way too much for me.
Yeah.
So I think part of me just wanted the comfort of staying close to home, and part of me wanted to explore community college where like there was no risk. Like I knew that I didn't know what I was doing, so I didn't want to like waste my parents' money around it. So yeah,
Good for you.
yeah.
I mean, you're kind of right. Like who college is kind of too early to be figuring things out.
Oh yeah, and like it's a lot of money to be spending on not being sure.
Yeah.
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 So that's how I approached my first year of community college. Was I basically took a bunch of GEs, a shit ton of classes, just sampling everything that I could because I wanted to figure out like what is actually interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And what'd you find interesting?
um, I remember taking philosophy class and I was like bored out of my mind because the professor was like super boring.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember taking a child development class and I'm like, hey, this is kind of interesting, but I didn't care enough to do the homework. So I didn't get
Mm-hmm.
a very good grade. Astronomy was pretty interesting. I took a creative writing class that I felt like was the first time I was thinking for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I took like a world music class, and it was just kind of like a random elective. Those
Mm-hmm.
are the main classes that I remember.
Did you
But
like?
the bigger thing was that I actually was still involved in my local church, the church that I grew up in, and I started exploring other churches, and that's kind of what actually was the thing that I found to be actually meaningful for me at the time,
Mm-hmm. Which was.
which was just being more involved in my faith. I ended up transferring, and I ended up transferring to a university that is a Christian university, and it was like a 5 minute drive from this like really I guess internationally known church, and I
Mm-hmm.
basically want to spend time there. That
Mm-hmm.
was my actual intention, and it just so happened there was like a university that was also Christian, like a 5 minute drive away, and so that became my veil of an excuse to get my parents to be like, sure, we'll let you go there.
Mm-hmm. Are your
So that's
parents
actually what I ended up pursuing. Yeah, my parents Christian, yeah.
they're Christian? Okay.
Or they raised me Christian.
Uh-huh.
My dad's kind of like mix of Christian Buddhist at this point. My
Mm-hmm.
mom is still definitely in that world. Yeah.
What drew you to this church?
So this is okay. So this is like the side of me that probably no one in ACE knows about, except for Andrea because our history.
Yeah, you don't
Um,
talk about it much. I know you've mentioned it, but yeah.
yeah. So and this is the part where like there's different parts of me that like have voices around like how I should present the story
Mm-hmm.
because it's just so out of left field from most people's lives that they just wouldn't expect this stuff. So basically, as literally as I could describe it, we basically did faith healing in this world, where
Mm-hmm.
basically we would go pray for people and we would see people get healed. That's like the
Wow.
TLDR of it. So like in this, to sum up that phase of my life, I probably saw like over 1,000 people healed of random miscellaneous ailments.
Okay.
Uh,
I don't want the TLDR. I want to know.
yeah,
I want to know exactly more about this.
yeah. So I can go into as much detail as you want about it,
Yes,
but that's
absolutely.
that's the high
Absolutely.
level that
Uh-huh.
when I say stuff like that,
Yeah.
like I grew up in the Silicon Valley, right? It's a very intellectual community and world. I mean, grew up. I'm like we're Asian, so like
Yeah.
there's even more of an emphasis on like just like use your head, shut down emotions, like anything
Right.
that's too woo, like we kind of resist culturally. Um, so like those two combined, like that, and that being the world that I grew up in, like
Hmm.
that's a very huge affront to a lot of people's worldviews in an intellectual society. But here I am, like I lived that world for 3 years. I
Yeah.
traveled, I spoke, I taught about this stuff. There's
Hmm.
YouTube. There's my old YouTube channel still up. Most people in my current life don't know about it. There's like 17,000 subscribers, like 8 million views, all
Hmm.
about this world that I used to be in.
Hmm.
But I don't talk about it anymore because it's just so far fetched
Uh-huh.
from like modern day things that like I think about, you think about now. It's just so
Yeah.
far removed. So, but yeah,
Yeah. No, I mean, I would love to hear.
yeah,
I'm very spiritual.
yeah.
And I don't think the modern world is doing things is not necessarily the only way or the
Yeah,
right way, you know.
yeah, yeah.
So
So
like, yeah, yeah, go ahead.
where do you want me to begin?
What is this? What is the process like, and like, how do you
Mhm.
identify people? How do you do it? Like, yeah.
I mean, if I were to just describe it functionally, what we did, you would think that there's nothing happening, and you
Okay.
might think that like, what's so special about this? And so literally, if I were to replay a scenario, it's like if let's say there's someone they have like a cast on or a crutch or like their wrist hurts, I would go up to them back in the day and be like, "Hey, do you want to be healed?"
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Sure. How?" I'm like, "I'm just going to pray for you. I believe that God wants you better, and you'll be healed." And that would be the interaction. And like, all right, they'd be like, okay, how does this work? And I'm like, all right, give me your hand or whatever's hurting. I'd literally just put my hand on it and it'd be like, in Jesus' name, be healed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would tell them to do something that they couldn't do before or try to make it hurt. And then what if they would get healed? They would basically not get in. They would look at their body part and be like, where did the pain go?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's literally a video on my old YouTube channel of like we're at a church. There's a guy in crutches, and we see him. He's got a brace. We go up to him. We do exactly that. It's all on camera. My friends and I are just saying like, in Jesus' name, be healed. And it's not one of those. It's not like a casted crutch, a casted brace. It's like a walking brace, so he can actually pull it off. And basically, by the end of the video, he's running back and forth in the hallway,
Mm-hmm.
and he had just apparently broken his foot playing soccer like a week before.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a very typical interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And that, yeah,
Wow.
it doesn't sound like anything flamboyant or crazy, but that's all it took.
Are
Not, of
you?
course, not all the time. And we did
Yeah.
not have, if you were to ask me about success rate, I'd like, it'd be great, like a gradient of like, there's certain things that we feel like we would see healed like 80% of the time. And then there's other things that we saw that would be like, oh, we're closer to like a 0% success rate here. And we didn't know why. And I don't have a concrete answer as to why. Yeah.
when you're when you're like healing something, is there anything you're doing specifically or thinking of or invoking God, or it's just
Um, it's kind of most of the time at the time I was just thinking about remembering the theological premise as to why this works, and
which is
which is basically yeah. So we used to teach this all the time. It's like um, in some ways, like if you take cops as an example, or like anyone who's in a position for you, or like a doctor or something, in some ways their authority is imparted to them and acted on simply by the uniform, right?
Mhm.
Someone wearing a doctor's coat, you immediately interact with them in a way that you do as a superior. You see a cop with a gun and a badge, you're like, oh shit, okay, you're a cop, and then you kind of you defer to them.
Yeah.
So just the premise of authority, we kind of implicitly understand, like just how you relate to your boss and whatnot. So in the Bible, the theological premise that were taught and then taught others was when Jesus was walking around on the earth and he was training his disciples to go heal the sick. He basically said this in one of the verses, like all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me, and I give it to you. Go heal the sick, make disciples of all nations. And
Hmm.
so that was said in like kind of the same breath. And so we were taught that, and we're like, hey, Jesus said he gave you authority over sickness. So act as if you have authority. So it's like Ian, you have authority to, take control of my finances and do whatever you please. If I said that, then you would act in a way where it's like, well, Brandon said he gave me authority, so I'm gonna, spend however I want. Right.
Yeah.
It's a very natural version that you can understand. And then we just basically transpose that understanding of like, okay, average Christian that we are teaching, here's some news. You have authority now. So, okay, go act like it. And then turns out when you act like it, or when we acted on it, stuff would happen. And that, at least for me, that's what gave me confidence to do it.
Mm.
Before I thought it was like this wispy kind of, if God will it's if God's will for you to be healed, then like I'll then maybe you'll be healed. And it was kind of like a shot in the dark kind of thing. It was like it almost felt like a gamble of like maybe I'll pray, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And that's what I used to think. And then when we learned this theological premise, we're like, oh no, wait, this is supposed to happen because I've been given authority.
Mm.
And that's all that we taught. And when we taught that, people acted on it, and we trained like hundreds and hundreds of people in both in person and also just writing about it online. And people all over the world started reading and acting on this stuff. Yeah, it
Mm.
was a crazy time.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I don't know like the exact I don't know exactly how to explain it, but I mean, there is the
Mhm.
placebo effect,
Yeah, totally. Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
that's shown to be effective, and we have no idea why, right?
Yes. Hmm.
Um, so do you
Yeah.
think that's part of it in this instance as
I,
well?
I yeah, I think placebo is a meaningful way to explain it. It seems to track with what I observed.
Hmm.
But the thing that is more surprising is that sometimes people who would have zero belief, they were skeptics, or like they were like, I have no idea what's happening, or like they're not leaning in to be like, oh yeah, I want to be healed.
Yeah.
They would still get healed
Hmm.
in those cases. So that's where I feel like placebo doesn't fully explain what's happening,
Yeah.
because it would explain what's happening for the people that are like they easily buy into things very
Hmm.
quickly. It would make sense for those people, but there's this whole other segment of people that they're kind of aloof or like minor skeptics, and they
Yeah.
still experience it.
But don't placebos work on all kinds of people? Smart
Um,
people, gullible
but
people.
no, but I guess I'm saying like, isn't the assumption of placebo is that they believe what is happening,
Yeah.
right? So
Or or they will believe a solution that's maybe not really a solution
yeah,
because they're
so
told it's a solution.
I mean, yeah, there were instances where like they would just tell us, yeah, like they had back pain or something, and we would just ask, hey, do you want to be healed? I'm like, okay, and then so we wouldn't even say anything, and they were like, okay, go test your back right now. The pain should be gone, and then they move, and then they're like, the pain's gone.
Mhm.
So in my
And
mind,
yeah, no, go.
some of the stuff like that doesn't seem to track with what I understand to be placebo.
Mhm. Um, have you ever used this trick on dates?
No,
That'd be wrong.
no. I don't know if it's wrong. It's just like
Uh-huh.
Uh, I just haven't. I think that during that entire window, I was single and I wasn't thinking about dating. So,
Mhm.
and by the time I started dating, I kind of like put those shoes down, and so I
Mhm.
just haven't thought about it anymore.
Why'd you put those shoes down?
Um, a mix of things. One, is, like I mentioned, about success rates of when we first started seeing people get healed, there's like the natural human skeptical cognitive reaction of like, holy shit, if this is real, everyone should know about this.
Hmm.
And that's where we were at for a while. And at a certain point, people started talking about us in the Bay Area, and they would basically like we would get house calls. People would call us to visit people who were like on their deathbeds, and
Hmm.
basically we prayed for enough people who were on their deathbeds and then saw them die that it
Yeah.
just eventually became really discouraging.
Yeah.
So like when you see the counter result happening, then it just leads to the open question of like, so what's going on here? Like, does this thing actually work? What are the limits of this thing? What are the mechanics of this thing? Why does it work sometimes and why does it not? And we had all these questions, and no one in this world that we were connected to, we were connected to some of these like veterans, these celebrities that had been doing this for decades, and they had no answers.
Hmm.
They don't have any more concrete answers than we did.
Hmm.
And so it basically, it's almost like the equivalent of like playing a video game and no one in the server has ever beat this boss. And
Hmm.
like you're asking like, hey, like what'd you do? And like no one, everyone's just grinding and like, I don't know, like let's just try it again. But
Hmm.
like definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over without any like expectation of a different, with expecting a different result. And that's kind of what happened. So that was one massive layer where we just hit a wall and we didn't see an opportunity to get closer to the answer.
Hmm.
That just
What do you
seemed
mean?
really inefficient. Yeah.
Who's we? Is it
I
at church or?
I started a house church with two friends, and we basically lived together. We preached together. We taught together. We ran our house church together. We were on the streets together. We traveled together. Um,
Oh, okay. So the house church is based in your house.
yeah, we was a literal house church. We just had
Okay.
church at our house. Yeah,
Okay. And it's the two
yeah.
of you.
It was there's three of us, and then we house church on a weekly basis, and we'd have anywhere between like 10 to 30 people come to our house once a week, and we just talk about what we were doing.
What's this? Where can I learn more about this?
I mean, you can go to my YouTube channel, my old one,
Okay. What
YouTube
is it?
at Wizpopping,
At Wiz Popping.
WHIZZPOPPING.
Uh, do you mind dropping it in the chat?
Yeah, I can do it.
How old were you when you were doing this?
I was doing this from when I was, I did it full time from when I was 20 until 22.
Hmm. So this was during and immediately after college.
Yeah, I was basically learning about this stuff in college, and then I dropped out of college to do this full time.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and
Uh,
so you could. There's some clips of me like teaching, and yeah,
okay. Let's do this. Let's watch one.
that's pretty long. That's a long talk.
Wow. 25,000 subscribers. It's a lot of
Yeah,
views. My
yeah,
goodness. All right, I'm subscribing. Um,
yeah. So these are like just messages that I used to edit,
yeah.
and share with people, and because those messages have changed my life, and I wanted to share with people, and
Wow.
yeah, so those are some of the thought leaders that we knew. Um, yeah.
Very cool. I'm gonna watch these later.
Simon Sinek is obviously not a part of this.
Uh-huh.
He happened to share a message that I feel like rhymed with that whole world. Uh, so that was relevant.
Which one should I watch?
What are you trying to go for? If
Um,
you're trying to get a feel for like the healing stuff, I would look
yeah.
at anything that's like the Todd White stuff. Todd White was like a street evangelist that we,
I, I want to see something
yeah.
with you in it.
If you scroll down, there's this one called like "It's Not Broken Anymore," and that's the guy at the church where he, uh,
This one?
yeah, that one, yeah.
What couldn't you do before? I couldn't walk.
So iamspirit.org, that's you?
That was my old website, yeah.
Okay. It's not up anymore?
Yeah, you have to find it on like archive.org or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this guy came, Tucker injury. Okay.
Is it a little stiff? Huh? Is it a little
All
stiff?
right.
It's like also
Let's see.
swelling down.
All things new. Everything that was damaged in any way, shape, or form be reversed and removed right now. Injury, trauma, you have to go. Strength and life in Jesus' name. 100% restoration. There it is.
Wow. That is nimble.
Foot's like getting used to it with me because he's in me. And so the doctor,
Yeah, I guess.
get it verified, and no.
Oh, he came in like that.
No pain. Just a little bit.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have one where you did it?
There's probably one, but I haven't seen most of these videos in a long time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, probably metal plate and pins. That seems like me.
Brandon just got this guy healed.
Take a few steps. Just ease it on.
So this is 20-year-old Brandon, huh?
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm making the octagon trick.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, dude. Dude, just just
Like the
take a
MMA
step.
octagon.
Give me one of the cartridges and just take one step. I'm still nervous, dude. Just you can.
You look jacked, Brandon.
No. Down there.
You got screws in it?
Yeah, I got 8 screws in the middle plate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I go. What's your memo?
No, it's good. Jesus has healed you. Just keep working. When you get home, just keep working it. Do the strength exercises, and then it's fine, dude.
Get his contact info, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Put it on your phone.
Can I get your phone number? Yeah, just call yourself. I'll just call
Wow.
you in like an hour. And we'll see how your legs are.
Maybe sit like in that car seat.
Yeah, actually, sit in the seat real quick. We'll check your leg. We'll get them all healed and show them who Jesus is. All right.
Oh my God. This is amazing, Brandon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
You're like a
See you,
different
man.
person now.
Nice meeting you.
You like talk so differently. All right, we gotta see the comments. All right. Very cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's a different world. Yeah, so most of my close friends like know very little about that part of me, or let alone have watched any of those videos.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Now all 23 of our subscribers know Brandon. So
yes.
on the
Yeah.
internet.
Yeah. So the other half was so yeah, I mentioned just not seeing results and not knowing how to get better. And then the other layer was I was at a church in Minnesota once around this time, and there was a lady who came up to me, and her husband had recently just passed away. And she told me that she was now inheriting his multi-million-dollar jet ski business, but she had no idea what to do because she had been a stay-at-home mom her entire life, her entire like adulthood, and she had 2 teenagers to raise. And I remember her coming up to me and asking like, "Can you help me?" And at that point, we had seen like thousands of people healed of all sorts of stuff, like as a collective. And I remember like her saying that, and I remember thinking, I have no idea how to help you.
Mhm.
Like, because all the faith that I had built and practice that I built was around like, we can heal the sick. Great. But we didn't like, there's this practical side of the world that I realized that had like zero competence in. And so that was like another big aha moment where I realized like, I can leave this world and all like so many people will still be doing this. We train so many people. So sick people will still be healed, but like we still have these problems, like financial problems that I feel like there's a lot less people solving because I didn't know anything about entrepreneurship then. So that's when I realized that like I just care about helping people. I'm not attached to how. And I realized that at that moment, this is the thing that we used to say a lot is one of the worst feelings in the world is to be in a place of compassion, but to feel powerless.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how I felt. And that's how a lot of you know, like you hear these stories of like someone's loved one gets cancer, and then they end up spending their like life force like trying to solve that thing because there's a moment of like feeling zero agency, and then they devote all their agency to try to like solve cancer. They start a foundation, they do research, they start funding things. So like that kind of effect happens to me where I saw someone didn't understand shit about money, and I'm like, I need to fucking solve that. And that's actually what made me think about I need to understand money because all my friends in that space were broke. We were living by donation. A lot of the people in the same space, they're not good with money. They're not good with business. And so that's why I went 180 to flip houses after that.
So you mentioned like you being a compassionate person. I think you talked a lot about you being a giver. Like, where does that come from?
Honestly, that comes from that whole world. I learned about generosity, and I mean, compassion and love are like central themes in Christianity, and even more so in the group that I learned it from. So they just modeled generosity in a way that I'm like, yeah, this is what Jesus came to do. He came to give.
Mm,
There's a verse that's the most famous verse. It's for God so loved that he gave his one and only son, that we may have eternal life and not perish or something. That's John 3:16. So we used to get taught, for God so loved, he gave. And
mhm,
that was just drilled in us at the time. And like, to love is to give. And so because that was like the like living and breathing of Christianity for us at the time, like to
mm,
love is to give, and to give is an expression of love. And so that just became how we operated. We were generous even when we didn't have much to give,
mhm,
because we believe that that is what Christianity stands for. Um, so that's where it came from. So in reality, like you say that I'm so much different now. Like on the surface, absolutely, I think many things have changed, but in terms of the core values and DNA that I still operate by, it's still largely informed by that part of my life, and that's why that part of my life is so meaningful,
mhm.
at least to me. But yeah, all those values still operate today.
It's not something your parents raised you to be. It was from these 3 years.
No, because like even growing up in church, I remember reading verses like "love your enemies" and like "turn the other cheek" and like "pray for your enemies," stuff like that. And I remember as a teen, I'd be like, I know this is what the Bible is telling me, but I
Mm,
don't like this person. I don't feel like loving this person. Like I don't like them. And so for most of my childhood, I didn't, even though that was taught even in church and my parents reinforced it, it
mhm,
didn't come from it wasn't accessible to me.
mhm.
And it wasn't until like I guess a lot of experiences in this world shifted things internally for me to be able to access that, to be able to operate from that.
For me, I don't think I was necessarily. I think there's some maybe upbringing that made me be a giver, but maybe this is something with you too, is like when you actually go out and give and do things for others, it kind of hooks you to that feeling and makes you want to do
Um,
it more in a way.
so I can actually point back to the instant where like this switch flipped for me. Um, I was 17, 16 or 17, and I was listening to this message from the leaders from this world that I'm talking about. And most people don't know the story, but there's a story about John the Baptist baptizing Jesus. Right before Jesus starts his ministry and starts doing all the things that he's kind of known for in the New Testament, John the Baptist baptizes him, and the story goes where as he's getting baptized, it says the heavens opened and the Holy Spirit came down like a dove, and God basically says from the heavens, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased." Um, and I forgot what he says after. But the takeaway that the pastor was using that as the background message, and he was basically trying to make a point that um, God the Father was saying about Jesus, "This is my Son, and I'm pleased in him." And the
Hmm.
point is that he had done nothing yet.
Hmm.
He had done no meaningful ministry. He was not well known yet. He had no name. So without having any credentials,
Hmm.
the message is that without credentials, humans, myself, believers, not or not, God is pleased with you. And I remember hearing that for the first time, and the pastor said something like, "Literally, right now, you can do nothing, and it will not change the amount that God loves you and is pleased with you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing more you can do that would make Him love you more."
Mm-hmm.
And that like fucking blew my mind, because that was just so contrarian to like the conditional love that I had grown up with my parents, and also with the different message that I got from church growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Where like, oh, if I sin, God's like very displeased, and I'm like, I gotta repent and I gotta pray and yada yada yada. This message was completely different. He was just like, there's literally nothing you can do more or less for God to love you more or love you less.
Mm-hmm.
He loves you absolutely, accepts you absolutely, and that just blew my mind. And I remember when I heard that evening, I sat back in my chair and I was just like dumbfounded. And I was just like, whoa. And I tried putting on that thought of like, if I do nothing else for the rest of my life, like I just sit here, God already loves me.
Mm-hmm.
And that sunk in, and it quieted basically every voice in me of like needing to be someone and needing to be something.
Mm-hmm.
That moment basically was like the first nail in the coffin for me of loving myself with no external reason to justify that I'm lovable. Like the message was, I am loved and worthy as is, without needing to do anything. And I remember the next day when I went to school, I was still kind of like processing all of it. And I remember all the thoughts in my brain just went quiet. I remember used to walking across the quad in my school and thinking like, gotta look cool, don't look stupid. There's the girl that I had a crush on. Don't like, just be cool. Don't do anything stupid. And I would have this like teenage kind of fronting look of like, just look cool kind of thing. And that's all I thought about. And I remember this next day walking through that same quad in just absolute silence, because I was just like grokking in the moment of like, I'm already accepted. I don't need any more attention or validation from anyone else. Like God loves, like the ultimate version of acceptance. I already have, and I didn't even earn it. So like basically from that night or from that day forward, I immediately became curious and generous.
Mm-hmm.
I started making friends with the kids that ate by themselves at lunch. I remember just walking around the school and looking at the kids that ate by themselves, and I just like decided to start sitting next to them and befriending them, because I no longer had any need for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm good. Like let me just give. Yeah.
So you are kind of at peace with yourself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the biggest shifts that led to a lot of that thinking and being for me.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything why did that resonate with you so much though? Like of all the different lessons and things you probably heard and contradicting things you heard, like why did that resonate with you?
Because even though it was so contrarian to everything else that was being said, it actually felt like actually good news.
Mm.
Like I felt like if I believed that, it would change my life forever. Like it almost felt too scandalously true.
Mm.
But in my mind, like at that time, like I don't know if you know this, but the word gospel, or at least this is what I was taught. Gospel is actually translated as good news.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember like a few years prior, I remember thinking, Christians keep saying that like Jesus and Christianity is the gospel, is good news. I'm like, okay, if this is such good news, why aren't people flocking to it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Truly genuine good news, people would just like, you don't need to sell them. They should be able to just apparently see that this is good news.
Yeah.
When I heard that message, I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's good news.
Yeah.
Like that felt like the creator, the most ultimate powerful being in the universe says, I accept you and I love you, and there's nothing more you can do, nothing less you can do. And I'm like, fuck, that sounds like really fucking good news. At some point, I didn't even care whether it was true or not objectively. It just felt so true or so good that I'm happy. If this is false, I'm happy to live in this delusion, because this feels so good. It feels so good to believe this.
Yeah. You
So
almost did you're healing on yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I think Buddhism is the same way. It's got the same lessons. It's like you
Yes.
are perfect the way you are,
Yes.
and it just is. And it just makes you so much happier when you
Hmm.
live life like that, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
And then you just start to think about other people and being more
Hmm.
at peace with yourself.
Yeah. The lesson became I am so loved by the creator of the universe. And now when it comes to relating to other people, it's like, how do I help them realize that they're equally as loved as I am?
Hmm.
And so that became the MO for a very long time. Yeah.
So was this before you met that lady with was the speedboat business?
Yeah, her husband's jet ski business. Yeah.
Jet ski business. Okay.
Yeah, that was when I was like 21, 22. And then the
Okay.
moment that I mentioned with the pastor that shifted everything, I was in still high school at that point.
Oh, okay. And
That was like
that's
16, that was like 17 years old.
okay. And that's what led you on this path to heal others.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
So
did
yeah,
so
that was the tipping point of hitting the wall with healing,
Mhm,
meeting this woman where I realized that I had zero power to help, and then
mhm,
combine that, and I'm like, I'm done with ministry, or like I don't. That took a
mm.
lot of the steam out of wanting to do ministry for the rest of my life at the
I
time.
see. I
Yeah.
see.
I started
So
just looking at other things of like, well, I don't understand money. Why, how do I solve money for all my friends right now? And that's why I went on the real estate journey because I wanted to, that was the driver.
got it. So I'm just thinking back about your video game analogy. It's like the aim for you for the video game was to help others, but you were playing this game that you couldn't figure out how you were helping them, but you were. So,
Well, I couldn't figure out the specific helping of like, how do I heal every physical ailment?
mm,
That was the game that I got stuck on,
okay.
or the boss that I couldn't beat.
Hmm.
So I left that game and I'm like, let's do the money game.
Uh-huh. And you mentioned you feel like you could help more people playing the money game
Mhm.
than what you were doing.
Yeah. Well, it's a mix of like being tired of being broke. Basically, for like 3 years straight, all my friends were living hand to mouth and didn't know whether we could pay a rent or not. And
Hmm.
at a certain point, that just really eats at your psyche. Um, yeah. So I got like definitely many times where I was driving my car and didn't know whether I could like have enough gas to get to where I was when it needed to go.
Hmm.
That's just tiring. And I didn't want any of my friends to go through that. And like all these churches, they're not financially savvy. All these minister friends that I used to teach with, none of them were like insanely financially abundant. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Mm. Okay. So you got into the real estate game. What was that about?
What do you mean? What was that about?
Like, what'd you do? What kind of real estate?
Okay.
How'd you get
Um,
into it?
I flipped houses. Okay. Well, no, that's what I say. I flipped houses, but
Hmm.
what I actually did was I flipped paper,
Hmm.
which is like a much more niche version of it. I got into it because at the time a lot of my close friends knew that I was starting to binge books about business and leadership, and they knew that like I was trying to solve the money thing. And basically, one of them uh, told me about Fortune Builders, which is like this really like scammy sales real estate program that you might have heard on the radio. They had advertised a lot on the radio. And they were basically saying like, yeah, we'll teach you how to flip houses in your own backyard, and like, here, come to our free seminar. And then we went to the seminar, we bought the $200 weekend upsell, and then we ended up going through their whole program. And that's how I broke into real estate.
Mm. What
So
do you mean by flipping paper?
so like the concept of flipping is basically you buy something at a particular value and then you turn around and sell it for like a markup, and that's flipping. So people will flip a bunch of things. People flip shoes. People flip cars. People flip houses. Um, and so usually the way people flip houses is they buy a house, they buy fixer upper, they fix it up, and they sell it. That's usually the way people conventionally know about it.
Hmm.
To flip paper is basically, if I'm going to buy a house and we enter into a negotiation and we get into contract. So I write an offer that's like 10 pages, and I write it. The buyer's name is Brandon, and then the seller's name is Ian, and we agree on, let's say, you agree to sell me the house for 500,000. Let's say that your house is actually worth 600,000, but for whatever reason you accepted my offer for 500. To flip paper means that I turn around once you sign that document. I turn around and I go to Tammy and I'd be like, "Hey Tammy, you want to buy this contract for 20,000? You give me 20 for this contract, and then you can execute on this contract, and then you can buy the house from Ian for 500."
Mm.
That's flipping paper. So if she agrees to that, I would have made 20, and she would handle the rest of. She would take care of the deal, and then you get your 500, and she'd be the one buying the house, and she would try to flip it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's flipping paper. Wholesaling is the industry term.
So you're not really taking any risk.
I'm taking very little risk. Correct.
You're doing a lot of the work to find these deals.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a different skill set. That's actually the bottleneck in the industry. Most people don't know how to find deals.
Mm. And you were good at that?
I was good at that. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Can you share your secret, or is it?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's not anything rocket science. I just door knocked. I did the shit that no one else was willing to do, which was door knock. That a combination of that, and I met a mentor who basically taught, like he was like self-taught in the whole game, and he'd been in the industry for like 20 years. So he had all the relationships, he had all the infrastructure, and so we could work on some of the like most complex deals and make an opportunity out of it when the average investor probably wouldn't be able to. So it's a combination of the two, where I got really good at finding deals, and I could focus on deals that were very complex. And then my mentor would basically figure out a way to like make magic happen out of it, find a buyer for it, or just work the situation out.
I love how the secrets of doing things are simple, like door knocking. It's just, you're right.
Oh yeah,
People don't want to do.
No one wants to do that. I basically spent like a year and a half door knocking, and these were all like people facing foreclosure, people with estate sales, and I would design my own route. I do all my own research to figure out like which zip codes were the most likely to have someone that would sell. I'd literally spend like 2 hours straight during rush hour, like almost like half the weekdays, like hitting different addresses and all over the Bay Area. Mostly San Jose, mostly East Bay. Yeah.
I'm assuming like lower income, or
yeah. I tried all of them, but I basically learned that lower income was the most likely route that we'd actually get a deal.
You get chased by any dogs?
I've had people cuss at me. I've had people threaten to call the cops on me, and I've had people threaten to like pull out a gun and to if I don't leave the property. Yeah.
Wow. So you put your life on the line for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel like your previous career healing people like helped you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I learned how to talk to people because I did all the street ministry. So I was very comfortable talking to strangers at that point. Yeah, and that was probably the biggest asset that I had going into it that I didn't know was an asset. Yeah, real estate is so much of a people game. And if you're good with people, you shouldn't have much of a problem in real estate.
But you always said, I mean, when I met you, you said you're more of an introvert, right? Like, yeah.
That's true. That is still true. That was true and is true.
But you just did it.
I did it. So like introvert means that, at least for me, social interaction costs me more energy. Whereas like for extroverts, like social interaction gives them energy. So that's the main premise. So it just meant that
not an inability to do it. It's the
yeah. So I did a lot of it, and that meant I was drained a lot. Like at the end of door knocking, I'd be exhausted, or like going to like a 3-hour networking event, I'm just exhausted after. So
yeah.
And same with ministry. I preach for like an hour, 2 hours, fucking exhausted. Same thing. Yeah.
Where did the door knocking lead you to?
In which sense? Lead me to in which sense?
Like, did you become successful at it?
Yeah, I ended up doing like 20 deals in like the span that I was active. So that was like about 4-ish years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the average real estate agent will close one deal a year. So that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of to contextualize.
Mm-hmm.
So I did pretty well in terms of actually getting deals done, learning a lot, and understanding the game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, the company in that space, the people in the space, are not people I really vibe with.
Mm-hmm.
It's just imagine frat boys having a shit ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
That was like the default culture I was immersed in. It's just a shit ton of alcohol and anything that comes with that, anything associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Is that what made you move on from that industry?
that was one of the variables, but I think the biggest variable was that I went in to understand money, business, and strategy, and I felt like I had learned that. And I felt like my mentor like it didn't have much else to teach me in that time frame. So that's when I started looking for my next steps.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically led me to the next company where I ran like an education company for teens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was the education company like? What did you teach?
So our thesis, my co-founder and I's thesis was um, we figured out what the values that we wanted to live by in our early 20s. I mean, we both had done a lot of like personal growth work at that point, and we just assumed that, hey, you know what? Like, if we knew this stuff as when we were teenagers, like we would be so much further ahead in life right now. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was the initial thesis. Like, what if we could teach teenagers this kind of stuff? Like, how to figure out what your values are, how to be more sure of yourself, how to have soft skills, like how to talk to people, how to like manage stress, how to be productive. These are all like young adulting, figuring out yourself stuff that most of us kind of have to figure out and fumble through in our 20s.
Yeah.
And so we just thought like, man, like it'd be easier if we knew this stuff sooner. And that was the premise.
Mm-hmm.
So
How
we
did
built, yeah.
you figure out your values?
I mean, that came from a lot of the church and ministry stuff. A lot of those values that we were taught, I'm like, yeah, these are great values. I want to live by them. And even when I was in real estate, when I lived and when I was in an environment that had values that were completely contrarian,
Mm-hmm.
like I still stress tested my own values of like, do I still want to hold on to these? Because like everyone around me is living by it differently. So like there was still a stress testing and questioning and critical thinking around like, okay, like do I want the fruit of these other values that these other people are living by? And it didn't seem really compelling to me. So like I think I made some minor shifts, but for the most part, I didn't change how I operated.
Did you have like an actual set of values?
I don't think it was written down, but I remember at that time, like
Mhm.
love, generosity, humility were all like really big core things that I operated by.
Hmm. Do
Yeah,
you have them written down now?
not exhaustively because yeah, I just haven't done it. Not
Hmm.
exhaustively. There's probably a few. I think on my LinkedIn, there's like 5 things that I mentioned. It. My Date Me doc, there's probably like 20, but
Hmm.
I don't think I've ever sat down and explained each one, how I arrived to it, and why I believe it's important. So
Yeah. I don't have mine written down either. I guess for
yeah,
like the companies that
mhm,
I have like values, but
yeah,
yeah. Mine are similar to yours. Generosity and humility.
yeah.
Yeah. Those are big. So for the education company, you're teaching these kids values.
So actually, I can pull up the curriculum.
Sure.
I think
More show and tell.
I sent it to a friend recently. Let's see.
I have a lot of YouTube to watch later from Wiz Poppin, Young Brandon.
Do you have your WhatsApp
I do.
on your laptop? All right, I'm sending. I just sent you a photo of our old curriculum.
Okay. So this is 2019. So this is 4 years ago.
Yeah, we ran this from 2017 to 2019.
Okay. So this was like in your late 20s?
My age is 10 years plus the current year
10 years plus
because
the
my
current.
birthday's in
Okay.
January. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. So
those late 20s. Yeah.
yeah, late 20s. So this is the curriculum. Okay. So these are all summer camps?
We started out as a 3 month program during the school year, and we ran that basically every semester. So it was like fall and then spring, and then during our first year, parents basically asked us, "Can you run a summer version of this?"
Okay.
And then we started running summer camps. Yeah.
Dude, these are awesome. More young
Yeah.
people should learn these.
Oh yeah, I know.
Like this is the stuff we should be learning in school, you know?
I know.
Like nobody teaches values or
Yep.
like how to be a human, you know?
Yep. Mhm. Yep.
Wow. So this is for high school kids.
Yep. It was
Okay.
I was high school like 14. Yeah, 14 plus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, how did they take to this? Like,
We were really good with teens. Like because my old co-founder and I, we used to be the moody, disgruntled teen. So because of that, we knew teenage psychology. We knew average teenage psychology, and if we knew that we could meet the most disgruntled ones, we could win all of them. And that was basically what happened. Where so like education, childhood education is interesting because it's you're dealing with two people in the equation. You both have to sell the parent, and you have to sell the kid.
mhm.
Otherwise, you're just gonna have a bad time. So basically, what happened was we would have parents bring their kid to a sales meeting with me and my co-founder, and we talk to the parent. The parent would tell us, like, ask us their questions, and after like 10 minutes, after the parent was like, "Oh, cool, this sounds legit," the parent would leave the kid with me and my co-founder, and we basically had like 15 minutes or less to win over the kid.
Hmm.
And our success rate was very high.
How would you do that?
We basically implement all the fundamental principles of like when we were a teen, how do we want an adult to talk to us?
Hmm.
That was the guiding question, and that's how we both intuitively understood that. And some obvious ones are like, well, don't be condescending. Treat them like they can think for themselves. Don't tell them what is good for them. Let them arrive to their own conclusions. Speak to their own languages, their own language, their own priorities. Understand what's important to them. This is like like standard like customer discovery stuff. Like this is what we do with
Isn't that
with
how
our
you would
customers.
treat all adults?
Exactly. That's what we understood as like the way you interact with teens is you just treat them like another adult.
Hmm.
Right? You might disagree with, and this is what most parents and most people don't get is that the way the translation stops is that the reality is most teenagers don't think like adults,
Mhm.
right? So they have shit thinking, and so they have like thinking processes that are reminiscent of like you're fucking stupid. Like why the fuck would you say that, or why the fuck would you conclude that, right? And most adults and parents don't know how to turn off that part of them, and they just said like, no, that's stupid. Why would you do that, right? And we maintain that front of like we're just going to assume that you're a functional adult and treat you like one, and if we disagree with you, we won't disagree with you in your face. We'll disagree with you by asking you a question.
Hmm.
And what we inquire as to like, okay, you believe that. Like, why do you believe that? And like, how confident are you about what you just said? And do your actions suggest that that is actually true?
Yeah.
So we just kind of help them reflect and help them realize. And instead of us telling them that they're wrong, we help them see that their thinking probably is not optimized.
That's some Dale Carnegie, like win friends and influence people
Yeah.
lessons. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you get them excited about these topics though? Like, do they care about their habits and procrastination and things like that?
So the conversational tactic that we use every time, which was after we felt like there was some rapport, we'd basically ask them, if you could wave a magic wand in your life right now, what would you change about it?
Mm.
And then we just let them talk. And
Mm.
then from there, they're literally just, this is just customer discovery, right? It's just, we're just using all their words against them and saying like, all right, like you saying you want this, you want to change this. All right, this is what our program can do. We'll teach you how to do this. We'll teach you this. And this is how it ties to what you just said is important to you.
So
Yeah.
I forgot like what it's like being a teenager. Like what are some of the stuff that they're like wanting to change in their lives?
I think most, like if you talk to most teenagers and even myself, like
Mm.
they are not happy with how much they procrastinate. Most kids are not. Most young people are not. They're not
Mm.
happy with how addicted they are to their phones. They're
Mm.
not happy that they're not getting as good grades as maybe they think they can, or maybe what their parents think they can, or like maybe annoy them to get. Most kids actually want what their parents want. Um, Many of them. It's just that they don't feel like they can get there, and they don't know how to get there. There's a
Mm.
genuine cry for help, but then like especially with Asian parents, like even my experience was like the moment I said I didn't know how to do what they wanted me to do, like it just become an argument of like,
Mm.
just be more disciplined. Why aren't you more disciplined? Why don't you just do your homework before you play video games? And like I'm like, I don't know. Like if I knew how to not do that, I would not do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It's just more fun playing video games.
Yeah. Right. So like,
Uh,
so yeah, those
true.
are, or like they want to make more friends, or like the more self-aware ones are like, oh yeah, I want a better relationship with my teachers. Or like if they're older, then they're like, yeah, I want to try to get into this college.
Mhm.
Um, so
Was
yeah,
it
let me just,
mostly Asian students? I saw it was
yeah,
at the Shengmeng
yeah.
Center.
So
Yeah.
we basically worked in the neighborhood that we grew up in. So
Mhm.
both my co-founder actually went to the same high school. We didn't know each other at the time, but we launched our program in the same school district, and that
Mhm.
was part of the sell where it's just like we know the environment that you're in because we were there like 10 years ago, and
Mm.
parents really loved that. And yeah, so that's where we started. And so almost all the students that we worked with were usually kids from all the really academically competitive schools in the Bay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How long did
So
you?
I think, yeah, like 95% of them were Asian.
Uh-huh.
At some point, we broke into the homeschool community, which is mostly white.
Yeah.
And that also was interesting. But yeah.
What like what outcomes were you seeing?
A lot of the self-reported stuff was like students in the moment, like reaching a lot more of their goals more consistently.
Mm.
Um, I mean, there's a whole range, right? So we probably worked with like 60 to 80 students over the course of that program. And so you have the whole range in terms of conscientiousness, you have the whole range in terms of motivation.
Mhm.
So everything that I'm going to describe to you is going to fall in that normalized bell curve, right? You're going to have some students that were like, holy shit, their life was transformed. Like they just fucking took off to the moon and
Yeah.
like became so much more disciplined, so much more successful and clear, and like had so many more systems that worked for them. And other students, like we would, like literally nothing changed about their academic performance other than they became more self-aware
Mhm.
and they started thinking more critically about their own life.
Mm.
Um, and they started thinking more critically thinking about all the aspects of their life. And then early learnings, we actually had students that were too young and like they weren't even developed enough to just think through anything. So like you have those as well. But yeah,
What was the
but
format of these courses?
it was just 2 hours, 2 hours of like workshop.
Okay.
Um, So usually we'd open with improv games for like 10 minutes. And then we'd have like an opening, like intro to the topic. And then we try to weave like a really practical exercise or reflection or like some kind of dialogue that's not lecture based because retention rate for lectures are so shit.
Mm.
So we try to make it as interactive as possible and add worksheets, discussion, activities.
Okay. So the improv was just like an icebreaker kind of thing. Then you
Yeah.
have like formal lecture of like what this is about, like what procrastination is about.
Yeah.
And then like what would that interactive portion look like? Like how do you make procrastination an interactive thing?
I mean, we always had slides. We had GIFs. We had videos. and sometimes we just did like actual exercises, reflection exercises, discussion exercises. We try to make them think, basically. Um, yeah.
Just about like procrastination and all that.
Like I don't remember specifically what we did in the procrastination one, actually, because it's just so long ago. But I remember, for example, when we're doing this soft skills one, like how to talk to people, we literally just brought like cuties to the whole workshop. And we gave everyone cuties, and we just showed visually just pass the ball. Like this is how you pass the ball in conversation. So every single time you say something, you throw a cutie across the other person.
Uh-huh.
And so they could visualize that like conversation is about like sharing things and then receiving things and then responding to them, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go to this school. Is it still
Yeah.
operating?
I mean, we still have the content, but
Uh-huh.
no, we haven't lectured on any of those in years.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we have recordings. We have the recordings of the of some like multiple summer camps. So all those videos are still around, I think.
I could see this be for adults. All of these
Oh yeah,
positive
totally.
habits, procrastination, self-motivation.
It's true.
These are great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened to the summer camp?
Basically, multiple layers. One was we tried to look at the examples of other education companies that had scaled and just try to understand like how long did it take for them to get there. The only comparable we had at the time was Kumon, and apparently it's like Kumon only had like one or two locations for like 10 years
Mm.
before they exploded, and we're like, damn.
Mhm.
And so like we didn't necessarily have domain industry competence in this space. So we're like we weren't confident that we'd be able to pull that off. The margins were already low because it's like education and services. It's like a double whammy.
Yeah.
So when we just ran after running that for 2 years, seeing the margins, seeing the trajectory, and also seeing that the most in demand product was summer camps and not the in person, not the during the school year program. That also discouraged us because all of us cared more about the impact and the long term development of the students rather than like just delivering a thing that parents wanted. Parents wanted summer school because it was alternative, it was interesting, it was with trusted adults, and it was basically free childcare.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere else to place the kid. Otherwise, they have to find an alternative way to entertain the kid. During the school years, school is the childcare, right? So that from the parent side actually became more relevant. And so we were seeing demand pool with summer camps. We could have probably ramped to the moon with summer camps, but it wasn't meaningful. We saw the kids for like what, a week, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like that's just no relationship. We don't.
Hard
There's
to
no
make change in 1 to 2 weeks. Yeah.
exactly. So even though it made business sense and marketing sense to go that way, we couldn't. We knew that we didn't care about building that business. So that was one of the main reasons.
And you just shut it down?
Yeah, pretty much. We decided to shut it down in January 2019. And then we basically scheduled like a closing ceremony March of 2 months later, and we invited all the past families just to kind of party and just talk about how the experience was and just build some community. And yeah, we shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the first two kind of things you worked on, you moved on because you felt like you weren't learning.
Yeah.
And then this one, you felt like you weren't able to,
Didn't have the potential.
didn't have the potential to do what you wanted it to do.
Yeah.
Which is make lasting impact.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think that initially the vision was like, let's build a very successful business around this. And then when it's successful, let's start a nonprofit arm and give it away to like the low income areas because that's where they need it most.
Mm-hmm.
That was the initial theory. Yeah.
Why close it down and not try to make it more impactful?
We just didn't see a meaningful route. It didn't seem possible. I mean, we explored we explored the digital angle. We explored with a couple of digital cohorts, but like you're talking about teens, man. Like teens and digital, like it's already hard to get them to pay attention when it's live. and like
Yeah.
we were good at that, and like we ran a few digital cohorts, and yeah, it was not. It didn't go very well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah. You would have to that's a hard thing to solve.
Yeah.
Did you have before you closed down, did you have a plan of what you were going to do next?
No.
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 Yeah.
Yeah. I basically spent like the next, basically from January until September
Hmm.
of that year, I was just wandering and looking for my next thing and just going very broad. Yeah.
Hmm.
I was just replicating the same strategy that I had before, which is like just talk to a shit ton of people, get involved with stuff, and maybe something will come up. That didn't happen. I ended up just doing like my very first formal job hunt, and
Hmm.
that's basically how I found my next gig.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Huh. So you're not a kind of person that's like, I need a plan B, before I move on. You just, when you feel it's time to move on, you move on.
I mean, at least now that's how I operate. I think before I just have much lower tolerance and I'm much more okay with the ambiguity, and I didn't build as many safety nets.
Hmm.
Now I have way more safety net.
Hmm.
Now I have way more backup plans. Now I have like cash flow.
Uh-huh.
So like I can just, I don't know, I'll just go to Japan or like go to the Philippines or something and coast
Hmm.
for a little bit and live off of cash flow. But I
Nice.
couldn't do that before.
What are some of like the safety nets and like cash flow you have going?
Well, I have the long-term rental in Florida.
Hmm.
I have a few commercial fractional uh, investments, and then I have a few short-term rentals that I co-own with some groups, and those are all positive. Well, one of them is positive. The other one's kind of like breaking even. Um, and then, yeah, those are the main things right now.
Wow, that's awesome. How'd you get into all of that? Was that from your real estate life or just accumulation of projects throughout time?
I mean, for sure, the knowledge was from that world. That's why I have like a lot more comfort in buying assets that I've never even seen. Um, but the long-term rental I just bought through a property management company, and it was a new construction. Is A through Z. They do everything, and they're very well vetted. So I've owned that one for like 2, 3 years, zero headaches, zero issue. I never think about it.
Hmm.
It's like a dream rental, basically. And then the two short-term rentals, I bought it through Fractional, which is a YC company
Hmm.
run by Stella Han, and
Okay.
they cross-pollinate with Asian Hustle Network a lot and subtle Asian
Okay.
real estate. Um, yeah, they're basically trying to democratize access into real estate, and so they help you buy real estate in a fractional form. So I bought the two short-term rentals. There's like 7 other investors
Hmm.
who all chipped in for the down payment.
Okay.
So
How's that going?
yeah, so one of them is cash flowing really well at this point, and then the other one's still breaking even. We're trying to get it to positive.
Okay.
Uh, yeah,
Would you recommend it?
I mean, I would recommend it in the sense that like in some ways, like if you're not trying to be an active investor,
Hmm.
if you don't understand real estate very well, if you can't diversify across a few assets, um, probably not worth the effort.
Hmm.
You're probably better off just throwing all the money in an index fund or Vanguard, Target Date, um, because it's just not worth the effort. It's easy for me because I understand real estate better than most.
Hmm.
So um, yeah.
Hmm.
So I don't recommend it for most people, but it's certainly a low barrier way if you're trying to learn. If you want to get involved in the investment side, that's certainly a way to. It's a lower barrier way to learn real estate.
You're basically paying them like to learn a little bit.
I mean, fractional makes just like a, I think, transaction when you transactional cut when you buy the property, and then I think they have like a management fee for because they do all your documents for you. They do all your LLC formation and like accounting stuff for you guys for us.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Cool. Yeah, I'll take a look at it.
yeah.
So are you kind of like just retired now, basically?
Technically, I have the freedom to retire, but it's on such a shoestring budget that it doesn't. It's like it's only like the bare minimum for retirement.
Hmm.
So it's like I can't do much with it. Like
Hmm.
based on if I stopped taking any working and just lived off of cash flow,
Hmm.
I wouldn't be able to travel. I wouldn't be able to eat out very much. I'm just
Hmm.
like it's just a bare bones life, and that's I don't know. That's not a real version of retirement in my mind.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Semi-retirement
yeah.
then. Yeah.
So safety net is there, and but yeah, it's not enough. I think yeah, we've talked about this.
Yeah. Are you
Yeah,
spending most of your time in Puerto Rico now?
that's still currently the technical base, but at least as of this year, I haven't been back to Puerto Rico yet. I'll be back in a week. But yeah,
How long have you been there at this point?
technically started in October or no November of like a little over a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's that experience been?
That has been it's just my current landing spot that's kind of budget friendly
Okay.
because
Yeah.
of the retreat menu that I'm managing.
How's like the retreats been? Like, how's it? I mean, you're mostly there by yourself, right? Or is there other
Yeah,
people?
yeah,
Okay.
mostly there. So,
Do you get
um,
lonely?
no, not really.
You don't get lonely.
I mean, I have like recurring meetings with friends, and
Okay.
basically during the pandemic, that's where a lot of those recurring meetings began. I
Hmm.
was very happy during the beginning, during the shutdowns. Like,
Some
I
people
don't.
like the pandemic, yeah.
It was just quiet, a lot of alone
Yeah.
time. I'm good with that.
Uh-huh. So you're enjoying your time in Puerto Rico.
I mean, I certainly. It's like, of course, having good people in my life and seeing them in person was like a huge positive.
Hmm.
But because I'm still in build mode, like it's still more important of a priority in my mind to have time to work on stuff and like get stuff off the ground.
I see.
I'd rather have that right now.
Hmm.
Um, and in some ways, having too much social interaction feels like a distraction, at least in this stage. So that's why I'm mostly okay, at least in where I'm currently at, stage wise, just having catch ups with friends.
So you feel like the social interaction is hurting your productivity, or it could.
If I was in New York or San
Hmm.
Francisco, yeah, absolutely. Because there'd be events happening, multiple events happening every night, and I
Hmm.
would feel the pull of like wanting to go to those things to see good friends, like legitimately. But
You
yeah,
don't think there'd be value in going to those things to your projects?
there's an upper limit of its utility,
Hmm.
and historically, I'm not very good at managing those boundaries because
Hmm.
it's just so fun. It's also like it's like an escape sometimes of like rather than work on the thing that's like hard, I'd rather
Hmm.
just have fun and call it networking.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
yeah, so there's an upper
Fair,
limit of that utility.
fair. Yeah. So, I know last time we talked, you're working on the sleep project. How's that going?
Yes, Sleep Dom. We mostly just built out a lot of the hiring systems.
Hmm.
So and then currently like iterating on some of the training, but we literally just switched modes this week to think more about marketing.
Hmm.
So I just turned on Google Ads like a few days ago.
Hmm.
And yeah, we're just trying to figure out how to get our first few customers that aren't part of our like warm network.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What's the next steps for Zona Genius?
Zone of Genius, I'm working with a dev to basically get the website all teed up, looking nice and like ready to handle a shit ton of traffic.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so that's probably gonna happen in the next 2, 3 months or so. And then once that's live, then that's just also a marketing question.
Hmm. Is that going to be your main thing?
Uh, I don't know. It's whichever one takes off is the one that takes off, and
So
hopefully
you're
all of
kind of
them takes
just
off.
like you're just trying a bunch of things and whatever takes off is what you're
Yeah,
gonna go towards.
yeah, and like same thing with the privilege thing. Like that one's, I have weekly meetings with my engineer on that,
Hmm.
and that's starting to look pretty cool. Um, yeah, but that's one. It's just less financially viable, but they all have potential.
Hmm. So kind of drawing back to the street ministry, the real estate, and like the education. What's your motivation now? with work
It's a mix of things.
or your project? Not necessarily work, but you know.
Like one layer obviously is just the financial component. Is
Mhm.
I want to retire early, and I'm less excited to do that in a 9 to 5 context because I don't think most humans are designed for the 9 to 5 context. I think it's a little too much, and I know that I just feel drained and stifled if I was in a 9 to 5 context.
Mhm.
So part of the why of at least how I'm approaching things the way I'm approaching is because I just value autonomy a lot and I value my mental health a lot.
Mhm.
And there's just very little space for that in the 9 to 5.
Mhm.
Um, and then like if I only cared about money, I probably wouldn't just go back into real estate because it is a very proven lucrative way to make money.
Mhm.
Um, but I also care about meaning, which is my issue. So like if I don't care about the thing, it's hard for me to work hard on it. So
Mhm.
that's my other problem. So I have to work at the intersection of what gives me a lot of autonomy, what can I build at my own pace, and but also still has high income potential. And the only options left for me is entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
And like I have to care about the things, so I have to not just work on any entrepreneurial project. I have to work on the ones that are interesting to me.
Mhm. Which
So
one interests you the most right now?
right now, probably sleep dumb. Yeah, sleep dumb.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I thought you would have
It
said Zone of Genius.
Zone of Genius is kind of in like a lull right now. Like I'm not putting any deep creative energy into it, which is why it's kind of stale. Because I just have to wait for the devs to like get this
Mm-hmm.
get it live. You know,
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love that
yeah.
test. Yeah. How many people have taken it so far?
I think in total I've had like 400 or 500 so far.
Wow. Anything you've learned?
Oh yeah, shit ton. Um, I mean, it's changed my life. It's
Yeah.
fundamentally shifted how I think about my life and how I operate.
Uh-huh.
Um, like, for example, just look crunching all the data. Like, I am a top 1 percentile
Mm-hmm.
deconstructor.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the sense that I score the highest,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean that's also true. I do score one of the highest on deconstructor, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like how high my deconstructor is compared to my other ones. That is the part that is 1 percentile.
Mm-hmm.
So how much I enjoy that genius compared to other geniuses is more extreme. That gap is much higher. Is the 1% top 1 percentile higher compared to like there's no one else that has a higher gap of enjoyment than I do. Um,
How does that change your like behaviors?
for me, it helps contextualize how weird I am.
Mm.
Like when people like, I just thought that this is a thing that I do, but
Mm.
now I realize that it's just like no, this is what makes me like unique actually.
Mm.
Like this is legit superpower. Like it's one thing when you're like at 50 percentile thing, you're like, oh yeah, I'm like there's a lot of people that have this proclivity just as much as I do.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're top 1 percentile, it's like it reframes everything of like, oh, this is like my gift to the world, or like this is unique. Like there's not a lot of people like me, so
Mm-hmm.
it helps me contextualize it like about expectations of like it's unfair for me to expect people to operate in the extreme way that I do.
Mm-hmm.
It also gives me permission to be okay in the extreme ways that I live and be in the world, and the ways I think,
Do
and be.
you
Well,
sorry, do you ever butt heads with people because of that?
um, I probably have. Nothing immediately comes to mind. Oh, I guess X's
Mm-hmm.
being like because I have such a proclivity to go into my head.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm sure that doesn't help in more emotional conversations or in during conflict.
Have
That
they said
hasn't
that?
helped.
So do you do you try to deconstruct the
Yeah, yeah,
argument like from a very logical perspective?
yeah. I think that's
Uh,
a very typical historical behavior.
and that's why you said you were kind of trying to cultivate your somatic, like intuitive feeling side.
Yeah, yeah, and that's work that I've done basically for like the last 10 years for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not enough. It's at a certain point, it's no longer serving me. It's a certain point if I don't know how to turn it off or put that hat down and put on a
Mm-hmm.
different hat, it's
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have a bad time. or it's just going to butt heads with some people. So the more flexibility that I have in how I operate, the more harmony that I can create in more instances with more people.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. You don't want to like blunt your superpower, but you need to be
Yes,
able to take it off in certain
yes,
situations.
or just know when to know when. I think is the bigger issue.
Yep.
Yeah, knowing that I can and knowing when to are the two important things.
Do you
Um,
feel like in school you were like kind of deconstructing what school was and that like you're like, why am I doing school? You know, you mentioned you're like not motivated by this game, you
I
know.
mean, I didn't have the chops to understand the mechanics of what was happening.
Hmm.
All I knew was that it didn't seem to make sense.
Hmm.
Something didn't add up, and I didn't have enough knowledge or awareness of the inner workings of how and why school exists, at least at that time, to really understand, to truly deconstruct.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, unfortunately, that would have
Hmm.
been helpful. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Another
yeah,
you could have taught in summer school.
yeah, but yeah, I think the other layer that's significant is just the frame of Zone of Genius is about uh, what ways do you show up in life that give you energy,
Hmm.
and using that as a lens of how you make decisions and how you spend your time. Like you can literally categorize everything that you do in your life as a thing that will withdraw energy and maybe is energy neutral in things that give you energy. There's like an excitement and aliveness that comes. Um, and in my mind, like one way to reframe that or contextualize that is if you spend your time only doing things that give you energy, it's almost like a form of free productivity
Hmm.
because you don't need to effort. Like it
Yeah.
just there's inherent payout for you, right? And so if you can be effortlessly productive, that sounds like an oxymoron. If you can do that your entire life and like create the life that you want, that sounds insane. That sounds like an impossibility.
Yeah.
But that's in theory what Zone of Genius is striving to create. Is like if I can give you that awareness, and if I can create enough tooling and systems to help you design a life around that, and where you can just enjoy and be more productive, and it doesn't feel like work, and you care about it because there's intrinsic value in it. Like that sounds like a world I would want to live in, and sounds like it'd be really compelling for people to live in.
Yeah.
But long
I
way to go.
think I think I think modern society has it wrong. And it's not their fault. We've just like evolved very quickly.
Yeah,
But like kids shouldn't I don't think they should be pigeonholed into like industries and things like that.
yeah,
Because I think it goes back to your point is like work is not about the industry or what you're doing. It's how you're doing the work. And you want to put the people that are doing wanting to do work in a certain way into those positions.
yes. And
And I
current
think
modern work just totally fails to parse and understand humans that way. It's
mhm.
too one dimensional or few dimensional. It's just
Yeah.
like this person has this skill and this many hours in a day, so they should do the same
Mhm.
with no regard to their desire to do it, their enjoyment in doing it, what their long term goals are, like how it affects their mental health to do this thing. Uh, all these other little layers that like, and the reason why, and it makes sense that our society doesn't because it just makes it more complex and it's hard
Right.
to manage complexity.
That would be hard, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
And
the
like
the
you might not be
incentive
able to
structure is built that way.
fit everything the way you would want it, you know.
You probably couldn't exactly.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
probably want everybody to be kind of deconstructors, you know.
yeah,
You probably want like very few alchemists and like mostly deconstructors, you know.
yeah, yeah,
Um, or you could
yep,
train people to do both, you know.
yeah.
But yeah, it would be so much cooler to do a world like that, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, it'd just be so complex and unstructured and flowy that it would just frustrate the hell out of people who really want order.
Yeah.
And for the people who don't like, who wants to quantify everything and structurize everything and everyone to fit in very concise boxes,
Mhm.
it's just going to be hell for those kinds of people. And unfortunately, our society is led by people who want those boxes to continue to exist
Absolutely.
because it just
Yeah.
makes things logistically and operationally easier.
It
So,
makes people easier to manipulate,
yes.
which hence is more power and all that.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I think that's why maybe entrepreneurs are like they don't fit in this mold. They just want to. They're not tend to not be deconstructors, although they have to be at some point.
Um, I don't know the stats on that, but that'd be interesting to have.
Have you ever run those stats?
I don't have job titles or careers associated with Zone of Genius scores, so no,
Uh,
unfortunately.
yeah.
Yeah,
Have you
it'd be
learned
interesting.
anything from the macro level of doing Zone of Genius?
Uh, yeah, women's skew intuitive, men's skew super and
Super.
deconstructor, super and deconstructor.
Uh-huh. So superhuman, as in they like to just use a lot of work to get things done.
Superhuman is enjoyment and challenge for the sake of challenge.
Hmm. Okay.
Like, I don't care about what it is. The fact that it's hard, I am
Mm,
excited by the fact that it's hard.
that's me. That's me. Yeah. Like the push-up challenge.
Yeah, yeah.
uh, but doesn't that isn't that at odds with the deconstructor?
What?
Like doing things for the sake of the challenge is like not really being a deconstructor or like logically trying to break things down.
I think um, there's a lot of, I mean, so enough people have taken it where apparent anomalies exist, where you have people who score high on deconstructor and somatic. You
Hmm.
have people who score high on super and alchemist, and those are supposed like polarities.
Hmm.
Um, so people like that exist. And so like I don't have a macro theory about it, but just the fact that well, people they exist. They seem to get enjoyment from those capacities and somehow are able to harmonize the two.
What can you share some of those anomalies?
I mean, one of them is actually my co-founder. She
Uh-huh.
scores really high on like four of them.
Uh-huh.
And I'm pretty sure Deconstructor and Somatic were up there. A
Mhm.
close friend of mine who helped me start the whole thing, she's also high on Deconstructor and Somatic. So they're both incredibly felt, intuitive people, and they are incredibly articulate about what is
Mm,
exactly going on in the world.
mm. So the
Yeah,
survey reflects accurately of how they are in the world
yeah.
for them.
And I would say the vast majority of Somatic people do not have high Deconstructor. So
Mhm.
they are absolutely anomalies.
Mm.
Yeah.
That in itself, I think, is like a superpower.
Oh
Being
yeah, I've told them.
both.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
told them.
Yeah. And same for a man, right? If a man can score high on deconstructor and somatic.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's when people can like combine these opposites that it becomes really powerful. It's just like
Yes.
Elon Musk and Steve Jobs are incredible visionaries, but they're
Mhm.
also able to really get down and do the nitty gritty and like
Yeah.
figure out how to recreate parts of rocket systems and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I also think they had like legitimate core competencies that made it easy to run a company
Hmm.
and just business instinct as well. So yeah,
Yeah. Cool. Brandon, thanks for doing this.
yeah,
This
man.
was really interesting to hear like your full story in detail. Learned a lot of stuff about you that I didn't know.
Yeah,
I had a feeling. I was like, I want to interview Brandon. I feel like he's got an interesting story. I don't know what it is, and I just want to learn. Yeah.
good stuff. Yeah,
Do you
thanks for having me.
feel, yeah. Do you feel energized or you feel tired from this?
So usually with social interaction, like even good conversations, like it's like a different energy bar. Like you have video games have different like there's like the health bar, there's like the energy bar, there's like the mana bar. There's
Yeah.
some other bar that we have not described that is true. There's like this kind of like excitement and hype. Maybe it's like adrenaline esque that exists in good conversation that
Hmm.
would be present in this.
Hmm.
But it doesn't change the fact that the physical draw on my physical energy is still negative. So
Mm,
like I'll feel like a momentary high, maybe for like 30 minutes to an hour after this conversation because of that adrenaline ish thing.
mhm.
But I will feel like I have to have sleep. I'll sleep like an extra hour in order to like regain everything
Mm,
tonight. Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Excited to see when this gets